For example 2, what we're going to be doing is solving equations. Now, solving equations for x means two things. It means we're going to undo calculations, and that's using opposites. And secondly, we're going to balance the equation. So we want to get x by itself, but we're going to do this by undoing calculations and making sure things are balanced. So in this case here, we're finding x, and we have a times 2 on the x, and we have a plus 5 on the x. So what we want to do is undo these calculations. So the first thing I'm going to undo is a plus 5, and I'm going to use an opposite of minus 5. And I'm going to make sure that I keep track of the left side and right side of this equation. Okay, so the left side and right side here. So I'm going to minus 5 on one side. I need to balance, which means minus 5 on the other side. Then I need to make sure I account for everything. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to have 2x plus 5 minus 5. I'm going to do my calculations vertically. That's going to be 0, so these cancel out. So I'm just left with 2x on the left side. And I have to make sure I account for everything on the right-hand side. I'm going to do 9 minus 5. And I'm going to do the calculation vertically. So 9 minus 5 equals 4. So the equals to the calculations are all vertical. This equals here means balance, and that's very important that we understand that equals as balance and not the answer to some calculation. Okay, so then the last step here then is to solve for x. I'm going to get rid of the times with the divide. So I'm going to divide by 2, and I'm going to balance by dividing both sides by 2. On the left-hand side, I have 1x, so that's the idea. I want to get x by itself. And on the right-hand side, 4 divided by 2 equals 2. So there's my answer, x equals 2. So this is the idea. We're going to balance, undo, and balance. Now, here when we have brackets, it's always a good idea to distribute out the brackets first, because we need to count what's going on here. So we have two groups of 3x minus 4. So that means we have two groups of 3x. That means I have 6 x's. Remember, we count x's separately from the ones. Then I'm going to have two groups of minus 4. So that's going to be minus 8. There's my distribution. And then what's really important is I keep track of everything that doesn't change. So minus 7, there's equals 2x plus 18. It's all balanced to start with, so it's all balanced now. And again, I want to keep track of my balance on the right-hand side and left-hand side of that equals. So whenever I can, I combine like terms. So I have minus 8 ones, minus 7 ones. So I'm going to count those ones together. So I'm going to end up with 6x minus 8 minus 7 works out to be minus 15. So just going to make sure you see where that's coming from. I group those ones together. That gives me that minus 15. Don't forget the equals. Make sure that you keep track of left side and right side, and nothing happened on the right hand side, so I make sure I transfer all that down onto the next line. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to put all the x's on the left hand side, so that means I need to get rid of a minus 15 with a plus 15. And I also want to get rid of the 2x on the right hand side, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take away 2x's, and I'm going to take away 2x's here. And then I can see those cancel, and I just tally it up. I count it all up, 4 x's, so 6x minus 2x is 4 x's. 18 plus 15 is going to give us 33. Okay, so there is my new balance. Get rid of the times with a divide by 4, and my final answer is going to be x equals 33 over 4, and we can just leave that as an improper fraction. For C, the part that I don't like about C is this divide by 4. And remember that only rule is balance. And really, as long as I keep it balanced, I can get rid of the divide by 4 by multiplying everything by 4. So times 4 and divide 4 will cancel out. But I just have to make sure I multiply everything on both sides of the balance. So 4 times x over 4, or the times and divide cancel out. So I'm just going to end up with 4x over 4, or just 1x. Okay, the times 4 divide 4 cancel out. I'm just left with the x. Minus. I have to remember that I have to apply that times to every piece. That also means to the 3x. So the 4 times 3x gives me minus 12x. Here I'm going to times 7 over 4 by 4, so times and divide cancel, so I'm just left with 7. Okay, just remember that when we multiply fractions, we only put times in the numerator. We don't times the top and bottom. Okay, the bottom is reserved for dividing. So now I can just combine like terms. 1x take away 12x gives me negative 11x. That leaves me with 7 ones on this side, and then dividing by negative 11, dividing by negative 11 to balance gives me 1x, and 1x is equal to negative 7 over 11. And just to note that that's the same as 7 over negative 11, and that's the same as negative 7 over 11. Okay, those are all the same answer. And then lastly is going to be this inequality. We do inequalities just like equations. We keep everything balanced. The only difference is if we times or divide by negative, we flip the sign. So I just need to, again, keep track of left side of the balance and right side of the balance. I'm going to put all the x's on the left-hand side. So that means I want to get rid of that minus x with a plus x. Okay, so I'm going to undo that minus x with a plus x, but I also have to balance with a plus x on this side. I want to get rid of the minus 8 on the left-hand side, so I'm going to do plus 8, plus 8. Now you could do this in separate lines if you want. I'm just going to do this all at once. Make sure I keep track of all the parts that cancel out. Those cancel, those cancel. So what I'm left with on the left-hand side is 3 x's. On the right side is 10, and my inequality, just make sure that I keep track of my inequality. And then solving for x, I need to get rid of the times with a divide by 3. Divide by 3. I only have 1x. Now that's exactly what I want. 1x is less than 10 over 3. So this is my answer. I'm going to show this on a number line. And I'm going to mark off 10 over 3 somewhere on my number line. And x is less than, so I need to go to the left. And it's not equal to, so I leave that circle open. Now, I want you to notice that when do we flip the sign? We flip the sign when we either divide or times by negative, when we undo the times and divide. Now that could happen if I did this. So let's start with the same inequality. And let's say that I put the negative, so instead of plusing x to get rid of the minus x, I'm going to minus 2x to get rid of the plus 2x. So I end up with negative 8 less than negative 3x plus 2. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. I'm going to go with negative 10 is less than negative 3 over x. Now, this is where I have to be careful of my divide. When I divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3, that's all perfectly okay. I'm going to end up with negative divided by negative is positive, so it's going to be 10 over 3. And negative 3 divided by negative 3 is just 1x. I can cancel out the times negative 3 and divide negative 3 cancel out. But now I have to be really careful, because now if I divide by the negative, I have to flip the sign to make this work. And notice that on this side, x is on the smaller side. Here, x is on the smaller side as well. Okay, so we have to, when we have to end up flipping the sign when we divide by this negative here, okay, and that means that we flip the sign.